Hey there, and welcome to the People Who Help People podcast. This is the spot for HR and people ops pros who are all about building better businesses by putting people first. We chat with founders and experts who've been there, done that, and are generous enough to share what actually works. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello again. Today I'm happy to be speaking with Kyle Patrick Smith, founder and CEO at HRKyle Services, about using marketing and content to attract clients, using consistent content generation and posting for growth. Kyle brings over 25 years HR and people experience to his role as CEO, has published 2 books, is a frequent guest speaker, and a veteran podcaster. Welcome to the podcast, Kyle.
Craig, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So first of all, the name. I can't quite figure out how you landed with the name HRKyle Services. Tell me what how you landed on that unique name and why you chose HRKyle Services.
Well, I'd like to say that it's a unique story, a lot of research. It didn't come down to that. I got an iPhone however many years ago that was, and as part of that process, you get a free email address, and it's the @me address, and it's like, I've got to come up with an email address now. And I've been in HR my entire professional life, pretty much 26 plus years at this point. And HR Kyle, I've been called that at different points leading up to that. I thought, well, that's a good email address. That's the one I'm going to use. And over time, the name just stuck. It's memorable for individuals. I built a lot of marketing materials. There's a lot of thought that went into the logo that you'll see behind me here. And it's something that coincidentally I started with however many years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, and it just stuck, and it grew from there, Craig. And we're a service organization. I wanted to be sure that it was clear in the title that we provide services and that it's bigger than me. That was the other thing that we've talked about as far as our marketing. It started out just me, but now it's bigger than me. We've got people who work for us as part of this organization and do a lot of good work for us. And I wanted to make sure that the name reflected not only me and who I am and where I come from, but that it's now become much bigger than me.
Terrific. So you mentioned your logo, which I can see flashing behind you. Tell me about your logo. What are the different components of it, and how does that tell more of the story?
Well, it's not a coincidence that it shows an upward trend. One. It's also not a coincidence. There's a person there. There's a person holding on to one of the accomplishments. But then you'll notice too, to the side of that, to the person and they're holding on to accomplishment, there's more room. And what that signifies is there's more room for growth. And that's part of where we come in. So we work with organizations and individuals to say, we know you've reached a certain point, but we're here to help you continue that upward growth. And again, it's built into the image there. It's also not a coincidence that the R and the K are in the middle and they're capitalized, because those are 2 of the letters in work. So if you kind of look at that together, it looks like work. The color is blue. Again, not a coincidence, because that's a very trusting, it's a very soothing color. We wanted to say to people, hey, whatever it is, we can work with you. Whatever the challenges with your organization, whatever the challenges with you professionally as an individual, we can help you. We're there for you.
Got it. And tell me about the shape.
So the shape is actually the state of Ohio. If you look at the cut of it, it's the state of Ohio, and we're proud to be in the state of Ohio. We see it as the heartland of America. A lot of great opportunities here, a lot of great professionals. This is where I've spent my entire adult life. So I think of it as kind of a home base, because I've done a whole heck of a lot of traveling. But there's a lot of symbolism there as well, just to say this is our home base. We have grounding here. We take pride in being in the state of Ohio, and it's something that's important to us as an organization.
And are all your clients or all the organizations that you work with and support based in Ohio? Or is that just, like you said, it's a base and it's a starting point. What's the rough split of your client mix? Ohio-based, not Ohio-based?
It's probably going to be that classic 70-30 as I think about the numbers that we're looking at. So meaning 70% non-Ohio, 30% Ohio. Yeah, we're primarily continental U.S. We have clients on the candidate side sometimes that are outside the U.S., but they're looking to relocate here. from our area of expertise, from a company standpoint, we're much better, we're more effective at working with U.S.-based companies, but that doesn't mean we don't work with companies that are U.S.-based, but they may have offices throughout the world as well. Overall, the number is about 30% Ohio and 70% outside of Ohio.
If nothing else, when you do travel, it reminds you where you need to go home.
Exactly. Good. And I think we all need to have a home base. We all need to have that one place that gives us grounding, and that's something that's important to us too, in our symbolism with our logo back there and the sign.
So Kyle, we mentioned 25 years of experience, but how long have you been the CEO and founder of HRKyle Services?
Well, again, there's a story to be told there. So I spent over 25 years in corporate HR, as we talked about. And my last role in corporate HR, I loved it. Great company, great everything. Unfortunately, the product that we were selling came under pretty firm attack from Chinese knockoffs. And unfortunately, they're not real good over there at acknowledging and honoring patents. We ran into that issue. They were producing our product at a much, much cheaper cost than we could. It was lower quality. And at a point, it was necessary to sell off that whole product division and really downsize the company significantly. And I knew I didn't want to go work for anybody else. So as that was taking shape, February 1 of 2024, I formally started this company as an LLC. And then as we wound down operations at my previous employer, September 10th was my first full-time day in here. So September 10th of 2024, I joined the company full-time. And as you can see, we just hit our 1-year milestone with that.
How's the first year going?
You know, it's the typical first year, I think, of a lot of businesses. There have been some wonderful highs and some really good accomplishments. And then there's been quite a few learning lessons along the way. Again, not the least of which on this topic that I know we're going to delve into further on this whole topic of sales and marketing. We've learned a lot. We've learned some hard lessons, and the good thing is we only needed to learn them once. So we've learned from those lessons, and we're building on that. So I would say it's been the typical up and down for a new company, but I'm excited with the direction that we're headed in here. We're seeing some good potential growth in this fourth quarter. So I'm excited to see where we're going to go next.
Got it. I liked how you said there's been some wonderful highs, and I was waiting for you to say, and then there was some lows, but no, you said learning lessons, and that's a great way to put it, because I've recently started a business as well, and every day has learning lessons at this
Absolutely.
point. So Kyle, you were very thoughtful about your branding with your logo, about setting up your website, and about content generations. Talk to me about some of the different things that you've tried and where you started. Let's start with where you started, because I noticed you've had a podcast longer than you've had a company. So tell me about that.
Yep. So the thought with the podcast, I'll address that first, and we'll take the first part of the question second. So the thought with the podcast was, I knew I had a lot of information. Again, this may sound whatever, however it sounds, but I knew I had a lot of information that I wanted to share with others. And the other thing that I wanted to use the podcast for is to have these kind of discussions. One thing that I enjoy doing, and I don't know whether you want to call it intellectual gymnastics or whatever it is, I enjoy thinking about ideas and sharing those with other people and hearing their opinions and so on. And my brothers and I, that prior summer, had done a little podcast to tell some of our stories growing up and so on. And I thought, you know what, this would make good sense to do this from a business perspective. So I had no idea at that point that necessarily I wanted to start a business. I just knew that I had some stories that I wanted to tell, and I wanted to hear other people's stories. And that's where the podcast led. And then what do you know? I thought, there's some good material here. Maybe I should write a couple of books. And then that's where the books led as well. So Craig, it honestly started out with me wanting to have some dialogue around HR topics, bring guests on who I'd known for all these years, just from a professional perspective, and just hear from them and hear their thoughts. And honestly, that's where it all started. I wouldn't say necessarily I thought, oh, hey, that's going to lead to a business. I knew at some point I wanted to be in business, but I didn't have a firm timeline. I guess fate intervened there to say, hey, company that you love working for, they're needing to downsize. And I took that as a sign to me to say, hey, here's your sign. If you were looking for one, here's your sign to start a business. As far as thinking about, what we wanted to be, as far as from a marketing standpoint, I took a really deep dive into who I thought that I was as a professional and the kind of organization that I wanted to build and what we would stand for. And if you see me reaching over here to my left, something I always have within arm's reach is a document, and it's been a living document. It's our mission, vision, and value statement. and really wanted everything we did from a sales and marketing standpoint to hit on this. The other thing that I looked at is, I won't lie, I looked at our competition and see, who are they? What are they about? And that helped me to formulate as well to say, what do we want to be organizationally? And what do we want to let our potential clients know about us, again, relative to what the marketplace looks like? And that really acted as the basis for how we wanted to move forward with sales and marketing. But again, as I shared, knowing that this was all still living and breathing. We're a new company. We're still finding our way. I've not been in business for myself before. So I knew that I needed to be flexible to say, okay, this made sense 3 months ago, but now we've learned a little bit. So let's adjust some of these things. So that was the early part of the process with this. And again, using that as our guide for our sales and marketing and our outreach activities.
Okay. You started with an audio podcast. In that audio podcast, I noticed you were very faithful to a schedule. You published something every single week, and you started with sharing some of your professional learnings from your 25 years, and then you'd bring on a guest, and that guest and you would speak. You did that for better part of a year and a half.
Yes.
Who is your audience? Or how have you leveraged that audio podcast? And in hindsight, would you do that again? I love how you said from that you created 2 books. So clearly the discipline of structuring the information in your head and what your guests were sharing inspired you to create these 2 books.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear, 1, would you do it again? 2, would you do it the same way? 3, what did the podcast and the books do for your business?
Great questions, all of them. So first question is, would I do it again? Absolutely. Because to reach the point where I am right now, I needed to go through that evolution. I needed to, and I think you summed it up perfectly. I needed to start out by saying, okay, what is my story? What are the things that I like to share and I like to talk about and get people involved? And then, as you said, that evolved to saying, you know what? Not only do I want this on audio, but I think I want to refine some of these messages down. And no joke, I've got a list of about 12 books I'd like to write. So there's 2, and I got about 10 or 15 more probably that I made a list of that I want to write at some point. But that grew out of those podcasts and those conversations and just seeing what are people interested in? What do they like to talk about? What value can I bring? And then as soon as I started writing the books and so on, I thought that was during that same time of starting this business. So again, I wouldn't have been in nearly as good a position to start the business if I hadn't started back a few years ago with these podcasts and really refining that message and talking and having the dialogue. And your second question was, who was it intended for? Initially, it was no joke. I didn't go into it with any grand schemes. Hey, I'm going to be the next big podcaster. I wanted my ideas and thoughts and the things that I've worked on over the years to be captured for posterity's sake. That's the only thought that I had with that. And then again, that evolved over time to say, hey, this is kind of fun. And let's talk with other people and get their ideas. And this is really interesting. And from that, the people that started to be involved were obviously the people that were on the podcast or people that knew me and just enjoyed hearing those conversations. So again, it grew, very, very naturally. I didn't do a lot of marketing and all this with it. A lot of it was about just posting out on social media. Hey, here's, the next podcast is out there. And what I began to discover is, quickly it extended beyond just my network. And my network's not small by any means, but it extended beyond that. And it was very interesting to see how the message has caught on in other countries and with other people that I didn't know and so on. And, like I said, it's allowed me to expand my connection with people that I never would have met. I mean, I've interviewed on podcasts and so on in Australia and all different types of countries. If I hadn't done that podcast and started to get that message out, I never would have had that opportunity to make those connections. And then one of your next questions was, how have I used it for the business? It is a way for me to talk from a story standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, to let potential clients and customers know who I am, what I stand for, what I bring to the table. And it's the best and easiest way to do it because it's all natural. The person's tuning in, they're listening to the conversation and where it's going or so on. And then based upon that, they're making a determination to say, hey, that guy would be really good to work with. I've got this challenge that he was talking about. He'd be good to work with. And that's the easiest sell job I would ever do, because what I'm not good at as a business owner is I'm not a good salesperson, because I don't like to do that. I do like to talk to people, and I do like to share ideas and have dialogue around that and see what challenges they have and see how we can fit in. So that was the approach that I took with the podcast. So it really became a selling tool for me, for people that listen and say, hey, this guy knows a little something. I wouldn't mind working with him.
So I'm going to press you for the next question. What business can you attribute directly to a podcast episode? Can you say somebody heard this, which prompted an email, a call, whatever, and then we did this work together as a result?
Significant amount. If I were breaking it down, especially in the early times. So for the period when I started the business to full time, 100% of the business that I generated, and again, to give some idea of the scope, I was probably averaging, I was doing this part-time because I was working a full-time job, probably averaging about 4 or 5 clients a month during that period of time, all directly related in some way, shape, or form to that podcast. Because again, as I said, people are listening and saying, well, gosh, this guy knows something. He could really help me with that. So it was all of the business, because there was nothing else I was doing to promote the fact that I was in business. Since then, we've seen a drop off. It would be hard for me to say in a lot of cases that it's that podcast, people who listen to that. But what it has done, Craig, and I know we're going to get into this more because we know how marketing works, people don't buy from you from the first ad in a lot of cases. No one sees an ad and says, yep, that's the person. We know they have to have a lot of different touch points. So what we've tried to do with our podcast and the other things that we do is we try to position our business to say, here's a touch point. They listen to a podcast. Hey, that kind of knows something. Hey, they see something else. They see a blog article I've written. They see that we have a radio station now. They listen to that. So it becomes one piece of this. Wow, he's now come at me from 5 different directions to do something. And how do I know that works? Because people do tell me. It's like, gosh, every time I turn around, I feel like I'm seeing something about you. You're speaking somewhere. You're doing this. And that, again, is building that trust, because I can go around all day and say that I'm a thought leader, but the proof is the fact that here's this, there's something over here. And it's through all those touch points, which, again, what's the average person need? 7 to 13? Well, if I'm coming at them from different ways, I'm really enhancing that 7 to 13. I'm increasing the likelihood that that's going to happen sooner.
So let's talk about some of those other touch points. We know about your early audio podcast. We know about the 2 books that came from that. You mentioned a radio station. That's unique. Tell me about that.
So this, again, looking for other ways to reach people where they are. And if I work with you as a client, I tell you, let's look to see how we can reach people where they are. Me and my business, I say, let's look to reach people where we are. And we know that there's some percentage of the audience that when they're working, they like to have something playing in the background. And one of the options was setting up a radio station. Again, not a costly endeavor. I'd have to look and see how much we put into it totally, but I'm probably spending at this point about $15, $20 a month. And you say, well, where are you getting all the content? I've already created the content. It's my former podcast being replayed. It is converting my blog articles through AI technology, and you can hear me bring that up a lot, converting those blog articles into audio. And again, that's just plugging the article into a tool and having it create the audio. So a lot of the content that you're hearing on the radio, and the vast majority of it, it's all content that I'm repurposing, and people are listening to it. And as you mentioned, I did the podcast for a long time, so I built up that huge library of podcasts. I've written, I don't know how many blog articles up to this point. So I'm putting that out there. So again, it's meeting people where they are. The individual that says, hey, I want to keep my skills sharp in HR, but I also need to work. Well, guess what? We've got a radio station here. You can play it on the internet, have it playing at all times, and it's playing in the background, and you can listen to that. And the beauty of it is you can pick it up at different points, and it's constantly informing you, because we don't have commercial breaks per se and all those big things. I mean, if we do, it's momentarily. It's very, very content heavy relative to HR and leadership topics. And again, at this point, I'm investing about $20 a month to keep that up and running. I know your next question, do people listen to it? They absolutely do. because I see, I get the reports, and sometimes I'll log on just to make sure that it's working correctly, and I'll see that there are people on there. Again, do I think it's the one and only source? Of course not. We have those other things. But again, to the previous point, it's another touch point where we can reach people where they are.
So you mentioned a moment ago, $15 to $20 per month. I think most people go, oh, that's easy. The harder part might be generating the content. So how much time are you investing each month to keeping the radio station going? And I heard you mention AI, so I know that's going to be in your answer.
Okay, you're going to love this. No more, well, up until a couple months ago, I had an intern that worked for us. She did all that for me. So she was taking the content, she was taking the blog content and converting it to AI, or putting in AI and converting it to audio. At this point, I'm devoting probably about 2 to 3 hours a month at the most into that radio station. Because again, how many podcast episodes that I have? 60 or so. How many blog articles have I written? 30 or 40 at the most. What's some other content that I've done? Maybe I've done some other podcasts with other individuals. So how many of those have I done? I've lost count, 20 or 30 of those. So you can see now we're talking about potentially a library of at least 140 pieces of content. Well, I can have that on a continuous loop. And it's very much plug and play, Craig, at this point. It took some time to load the library, obviously, and I did that. But now it's just going out there, keeping an eye on it, adding new content as it comes along, maybe tweaking the order of some of the content so I have a good mix as far as what people are hearing at different points of the day and the day of the week. It's 2 or 3 hours at the most, honestly.
Tell me more about that AI tool, because whenever I hear something like this and somebody says, oh, I use a tool, I want to know what that tool is. So is it one of those things where you train it on your voice and then you load up your content and it literally puts it in your voice without you recording all these speaking parts?
Well, the short answer to your question is that particular tool that I'm speaking to, yes, that's how it works. But one thing that we've set a precedence on in this organization, it came from me because I know the role of AI in business. I'm looking to my left because I'm looking at my intranet page. I have a good 15 to 20 AI resources that I use for different things. And that happens to be one of them. Some of our advertising we use AI for. Some of our articles we'll use AI for to determine what makes sense from an article standpoint. We use AI before when we wanted to pitch out to different podcasts to be guests on there. So I've got a list of AI resources depending on what I'm looking to do that I can use for AI. Now, one tool that I'm actually in the process of working with right now that's going to be our central AI tool for our organization. But I'm in the process of educating it now. So you say, well, how are you educating it? I'm educating it with our policies and procedures. I'm educating it with our mission and vision and value statement. I'm educating with all the content that I built up to this point. I'm educating it on our logo and our mission and our product offering and our service offering and so on. So I'm educating this tool. So ideally we reach a point very soon where anybody in the organization, regardless of what they need to do, they can use this AI tool for anything you can imagine. Us, in the tools that we have available, there's nothing that we can't sit here and come up with that AI doesn't help us with. I mean, I could sit here and list off things, Craig, I'd probably leave something out.
So if you could be a little more specific on the AI tool that you're training. Most people know ChatGPT. Is it your own custom GPT, or what exactly are you doing?
No, so it's one that we've bought. It's off the shelf. And again, I'm hesitant to say the name, but if someone were to do a Google search and they took and said, convert words to speech or convert words to audio, they will find this tool. And there's actually a few good ones out there. Again, I did some research based upon what I do to say, hey, what makes the most sense, especially from a cost standpoint. And this is the one that came up for me. But there are a few out there. And again, it's as simple as you go in, you pick the AI bot that you want to have read it, and you can do a test to say, okay, here's their voice, what it sounds like. If you're using it for any sort of video, you can pick what the person looks like and so on. You can pick the speech pattern, if they have an accent, if they're excited, if you want them to be more level as far as they're speaking. So you can pick all these parameters. And then the last step is, quite literally, copy the article that I've written, paste it in there, it processes it, and it's pretty quick. In about a minute, it takes that and it creates the audio for me. And then I check it, make sure it sounds good, and then download it to my computer and upload it to a radio station. And that's all the time it takes.
So this radio station, can you give the name of that or how?
Yes. So the radio station is called WorkSphere Radio.
WorkSphere. Got
Yep.
it.
So Work, WORK, SPHERE Radio. And the symbolism there is, we're the world of work is where we specialize, and that's where we're good at. So Work Sphere, just like it sounds.
I was trying to ask if somebody wanted to set up their version of WorkSphere Radio.
Yes.
Can you give the tool that you use?
I certainly can. I've got it here right to my left. They're going to want to look up a company called Citrus 3, CITRUS, the number 3. And they literally call themselves the Internet Radio Company. And I would caution them to say, don't judge a book by its cover, because I did some research. This one came up as highly recommended. But when I looked at it, it's nothing fancy. It does not have a fancy, well-polished look to it. But it has been incredibly reliable for me. It's been extremely easy to use. And as I mentioned, my monthly fee is about $20 a month. So it's very cost effective. To give you some idea of storage, because this is important when you talk about this, even on the plan that I'm on, I have 100 gigabytes of storage. So I can add 100 gigabytes worth of content before I'd have to upgrade. So I'm not anywhere near quite that yet. But again, I'm logging onto it now. I'm looking at it. I've got a dashboard here. I can see what's been played on my station. I can see what's being played currently. I can create jingles. I have got a public page that I can create. Very easy to use. Again, don't judge a book by its cover because it doesn't look overly fancy, but it works very well for me and I find it very easy to use. So Citrus 3.
Citrus 3, got it. And WorkSphere Radio is your specific station.
That's my specific station. So if someone were to go out on Google and they look for WorkSphere Radio, they're going to find it in their Google search results.
WorkSphere Radio, got it. So how do you use that to attract new clients? Or do you? Is it something you share with your existing clients, or is it something that's helped you attract new clients?
Both. Okay. So, one of the things I encourage anybody that's looking for me to do a search on Google and look things. Well, that's something else that comes up and people see that. And again, what we begin to run into, and especially in our business, because the business that we're in, Craig, is based upon knowledge. It's a knowledge business. So we're competing against our competitors' knowledge as well. So if we have these different mechanisms that we're putting information out there, people look at that and say, well, gosh, the guy's got a radio station. He's on all these blogs. He's got his own podcast. He's on all these other podcasts. He's a speaker on different stages and so on. It begins to build my credibility as a knowledge expert because people that work with us, what they're buying is my knowledge. They're saying, I need him and I need his team's knowledge in my business to make us better. So the way that I prove that, just like I tell our candidates to prove their knowledge, is I use these different mechanisms to say, I'm pretty darn knowledgeable with what I have. So to answer your question is, it absolutely will generate new business because people are looking at that as another mechanism. But we also make sure that we promote it to our existing connections. So every week we send out a newsletter. In that newsletter, we're promoting our radio station among our other channels. I use LinkedIn a great deal. I put LinkedIn posts out there to remind people that we've got the radio station. So we're using that through other mechanisms to say, hey, listen to this. Here's further proof that this guy knows what he's talking about.
Great social proof.
Mm-hmm.
So we've covered the audio podcast, the books, the radio station, which is quite unique, the blog posts, and then, oh, wait a second, you just mentioned newsletter. And I also know you've relatively recently launched the HR department, which is the video podcast. Where sometimes it's you and Becky.
Yeah.
So tell us about the pivot to video from audio, and tell us also about the newsletter. You seem to be the king of content, and that's
Craig, I'm going to use that. Hold on, let me make a note here.
I don't know how you have time to generate the amount of content you generate, but you seem to be in a rhythm, and so anything you can talk about how you generate this content and reuse this content. Like, I like the fact that you said, well, a radio app, reinforced the radio on the newsletter, and the newsletter is what people sign up for. So a lot of people are thinking, what do I need to do in this space? And you certainly set a high bar.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm going to use that king of content. I like that. So we're following each other on LinkedIn, so watch for that to come up. But in all seriousness, this is my passion. This is truly my passion, working with people, being a part of HR and so on. So I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I work 7 days a week. We took a vacation a few weeks back, and I had my equipment out there on the beach because we went to the beach and we did that. And they had a very nice business center there that I could work and do these things. But this is what I like to do. So I'm always doing this. So it does take a lot of time. It absolutely does. 7 days a week. I'm probably working 15 hours a day, roughly, on different things. But thank God I've got my wife in the business. She joined the business, I think I may have mentioned it, in April this year. And she has been a tremendous help and a resource for me. Because as you mentioned, she now does the HR department podcast with me, and that's a video podcast. So we have some fun with that. She takes the lead on that. We don't do any editing with it. We go with what we got. But she takes the lead as far as developing the content, finding the talking points, and really building that out. She's also taken the lead on the newsletter, thank God, because we know we want to do a newsletter. We know how effective those are, and it does generate business for us. We get leads from that and so on. So she's taken the lead on the newsletter as well. One thing that we really try to do, and this comes from my HR days as well, Greg, find your rhythm and find your process, and then just do it over and over again. And you know this. You've been doing your podcast for a long time. You get into a groove after a while. You prep your guests the same way every time. You have your same script that you follow and so on. Trust that. If you're a business owner, trust that, because that's what we do with our newsletter. So now we've got this template that we follow. Some of the content's the same. Maybe we tweak a little bit, but the messaging, we're focusing on messaging. So we pick a theme every week of what we want to focus on with our newsletter and some of our other content that we do. And then everything centers around that. And then that's what's feeding into the newsletter. But the newsletter template's already set. So we know in every newsletter, we're going to have mention of my blog article, any of the blog articles that I do, any of my appearances, the things that Becky is up to, the things that our other team have been up to in the past week, what we're looking forward to in the next week, and so on. So again, it makes it much easier when you know these are my parameters. So what do I need to get done in the next few days? Okay, Becky gives me a deadline on some of these things. Hey, I need your blog article done by Friday. So I know that I've got to block off time. And, if you wrote a blog article, it takes a couple hours. So I'll block off an hour or two, and this is what I'm going to focus on. But we've already talked about the theme. So I know what the theme's going to be. And those themes are all in my wheelhouse because of what I've done. So then that helps to refine it down. I may well have done a talk about whatever it is. So maybe I've already got the materials that I can draw in from a PowerPoint presentation and so on. It's having that structure, using the resources you have. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Get your thoughts down and be very disciplined about how you approach it. And again, that's a much longer answer than you were looking for. I'll start out with I'll end where I started. Thank God Becky joined the business because she's really taken ownership of these things, and she helps keep me on track because, again, she tells me, hey, the newsletter goes out Monday. Here's what I need from you. And she'll give me a to-do list, and then that's part of what I'm working on. And the same way with our HR department podcast. Here's going to be the theme this week. Here's the things we're going to talk about. And the beauty of that is, Craig, honestly, I just show up. She handles everything else.
We all need a Becky.
Yes, we do. Yes.
We all need a Becky.
Yeah.
So let me close on this. You've made a significant investment in generating content. You've taken us through some of the different channels that you use and some of the ways it's establishing social proof and building authority and in some cases filling people's day with something in the background, some subliminal and not so subliminal messages, reminding folks why they enjoy working with you. Talk to me about return on investment. What do you think if somebody doesn't have the structure or the discipline or frankly the runway that you have with creating content? One, if you said, start here because I've seen the greatest return from blank. And I can almost fill in the blank for you, but I want to hear what your answer is.
Yeah, it's going to be social media, and specifically for me, and I think it probably relates to a lot of your audience, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is such an underused resource, and I get so frustrated because, I'll go out and I monitor some of the boards as far as like Reddit and places, just see what people were saying, keep my finger on the pulse from that standpoint. And I hear so many people in the professional world just downplaying the importance of LinkedIn, and they couldn't be more wrong. If I only had one place that I ever shared content and really invested in, it would be in LinkedIn, because tons of business people out there, they love to engage with content. People go out there to find new jobs, to meet new people, to learn information and so on. It's just a wonderful source. And if you're only picking one, or you only have time for one, go for it. But use it effectively. Use it for what it's meant for. And you'll notice everything that I do, Craig, and I think you picked up on it, I see as a long-term play. Everything in my life I see as a long-term play, up to and including all the interactions that I have. And I joke with people, and this will be true of you and I. We've met each other. We're stuck with each other now. We absolutely are. We're going to know each other till we've decided we don't want to interact anymore. And that could be years in the making. That's how I view all relationships. That's how I view all the things that we do. So when you talk about return on investment, I never think transactionally. And I've always coached my recruiters on this as well. Do not think transactionally. Do not meet Craig and say, okay, does Craig fill one of my openings? No. Okay, goodbye, Craig. Craig's got these skills. He brings these things. Craig over here, can we fit him into something now? No. Can we in the future? Potentially. Here's a quick story on that front that gives you a feel for where I come from on this. I met a candidate that I interviewed, and she just wasn't quite a good fit. Fast forward 7 years later, I needed a salesperson in Texas that was bilingual, that spoke Spanish and English, and had a presence in the transportation logistics industry. First person I thought of was her. I hired her. I was with a different company. Her whole life had changed by then. She'd gotten married, had a couple of kids, and so on. She was the right candidate at the right time. That's how I approach all of this, is I see the opportunity and I say, okay, this is a long-term play for us. I'm not going to put a radio station out tomorrow and get a bunch of leads come in. I'm not going to write a blog today and then, whoa, we're flooded with business. But I know if I'm consistently doing that, like you said with the podcast, people know with that HRKyle podcast, week in and week out, they knew to expect it. They knew what day to expect it and so on. And it's building that. And part of that, too, is building trust in your brand. Because it also tells people, gosh, she's reliable. And it was cool to hear you pick up on that. Because that's one of the things that I want to convey as part of our company message. You can count on us. I say all the time, if you email us, guess what we're going to do? We're going to respond to it. If you call us and we don't answer right away and you leave a voicemail, we're going to return that voicemail. And we found, by the way, that that's a competitive advantage for us. But it's those kind of things, Craig. We're thinking long term with everything we do.
Yep. And you just reminded me of two things that struck me as I was doing my homework in advance of meeting you today. Was one, you mentioned you had a recent HR department video podcast about your talent pipeline philosophy.
Yes.
Plug number one, go watch that. More about the 7 years later story and other tidbits. And two, you had a recent post that said something surprising has happened at HRKyle Services. We answer the phone. We call you back. So enough on those two. Look for that one on LinkedIn. So I thought both of those were well done and speak to some of those values that you mentioned in the beginning that were part of what you bring for every client, what's made you successful over 25 years, and what you're reinforcing through your content generation. My answer to fill in the blank on return on investment was the one that you said there towards the end, consistency. Consistency, discipline reinforces that message that you brought up front. What do we stand for? What are we trying to convey? What are we trying to reinforce? So, Kyle, we could keep going. You and I like talking, but this has been very helpful. If somebody heard something today that they say, oh, I want to know more about that, or I want Kyle's tips on starting my own radio station, what's the best ways they can get in touch with you?
I'll tell you what, this is going to be out of the ordinary again, but it fits with what we just talked about. Send me an email, kyle@hrkyle.com. And if you don't get a response till 11 or 12 o'clock at night, that's because that's when I'm working on it. But you will get a response. I set a standard for myself of no longer than 48 hours. I take pride in that. So the best way is kyle@hrkyle.com. If you want to know more about us as an organization, what we do, hrkyle.com. That's our website. And I always encourage people to do a Google search. I want people to research us and know who we are and what we're about. and make an informed decision as far as working with us. So if you do a Google search on HRKyle or HRKyle Services, you should find a lot of information that makes you say, yeah, I think that guy knows what he's talking about.
Kyle, I've enjoyed my last 24 hours of getting to know you better. I've enjoyed this podcast and appreciate you sharing your learnings over a relatively short period of time, but high intensity period of time, full of some highs and other learning opportunities.
Yeah.
So, well done. Thanks, Kyle.
Craig, thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure. And I really enjoyed this as well. Thank you for having me on.
Terrific. Thank you.